They laughed when his cart squeaked down the hallway. Every morning, like clockwork, that wobbling wheel announced him before he even turned the corner. "Old Mop's on the move," one of them would whisper. Then the rest would smirk, shuffle their coffees, or raise their MacBooks higher like he was some kind of background nuisance, and he never said a word, not when they spilled oat milk across the marble counters and walked away like he was their mother. Not when they joked about him being part of the original infrastructure, not even when one of the interns, the cocky one with the custom sneakers and no inside voice, made a fake invoice for janitorial wisdom 25 cents an hour and stuck it to the fridge. He just kept working. One hallway, one mop stroke, one sunrise at a time. The building was brand new, all chrome and glass, but it had no soul, not like the one that stood there before it, a modest brick warehouse. His late wife used to clean at night when the babies were sleeping, and the world was quieter. He used to wait in the car for her, bring her sandwiches, read old jazz magazines by the dashboard light. But when she passed, something in him needed to keep that rhythm alive. So he bought the land, quietly, through a trust, with dividends from 3 decades of slow, boring investing, the kind no one brags about on LinkedIn. Then he partnered with developers, signed papers, cashed checks, and when it was finally built, this shiny new hub full of kombucha machines, VC-backed startups and fast-talking founders, he asked for just one thing: a badge, a closet, and a uniform. They thought it was a joke. The investor wants to clean, but he just smiled, small and stubborn, said he missed the way pine cleaner smelled at 6 a.m., and now here he was. Floor 6, cleaning up after a pitch meeting gone wild, where someone had popped a bottle of fake champagne and left glitter confetti all over the carpet. "Careful, old man," one of them said that morning, stepping over his bucket with a scoff. "Wouldn't want you to slip and sue us or something." Another voice chimed in. Nate, he thought. One of the loud ones. "Nah, man, he can't afford a lawyer. Look at those shoes." They all laughed. He didn't. He just wrung out the mop, the water slapping the plastic like a heartbeat. Then he looked up. Just for a moment, his eyes meeting Nate's. Calm. Sharp. Like still water that ran too deep to guess. "You boys flood this floor," he said gently. "You're gonna wish you had someone like me around." Nate waved him off. "We got tech insurance, Grandpa." The janitor didn't answer, just kept working, like always. But tomorrow was Tuesday, and Tuesday was board meeting day, the day the tenants finally learned who signed their rent checks, and who could cancel them just as easily. By noon, the 6th floor reeked of ego and citrus cleaner. Startups buzzed like caffeinated hornets, glass-walled conference rooms glowing with whiteboards full of jargon, pitches, seed rounds, synergy. But not a single one of them noticed the man sweeping under their dreams, or how carefully he listened. They never asked his name, called him Boss Man once, but not out of respect. It was mockery, coated in fake praise. He didn't mind, not really. Not after all these years. It was just funny, how people only saw what made them feel taller. That morning, just before sunrise, he'd pulled a manila folder from the locked drawer in the janitor's closet. Inside was the lease agreement for the building. His name wasn't on the front page. No, that was the trust. But on page 17, in the clause about emergency tenant removal and operational review, his signature stood alone. Majority controlling shareholder, Isaiah J. Cole. Same man they laughed at when his hip cracked a little as he bent to tie a trash bag. Same man who used to drive his wife across town in a rusted Civic so she could scrub someone else's law office at midnight. Same man who'd put 3 kids through college without a GoFundMe, without a single soul knowing he was worth more than the entire building. But he'd kept the closet. He'd kept the uniform, because it wasn't about the money, it was about the memory. Isaiah tucked the folder back into the drawer. Then he checked his watch. 12:47. At 1 sharp, the quarterly tenant meeting would begin on the 12th floor. That glass-walled boardroom with the panoramic skyline view, the one Nate had been bragging about all morning. He'd overheard him, of course, loud as ever. "I'm bringing the demo to the board today," Nate had announced, pacing back and forth with a Bluetooth headset, like he was auditioning for Shark Tank. "This building needs to know who we are. We're the future of tech, baby." His buddies had clapped. One even said, "Show up in that jacket, bro. Let 'em know we built this floor." Isaiah had smiled to himself as he dumped their overflowing recycling into the bin. "You didn't. Build nothing, child." By 12:58 he was standing outside the boardroom, not in his janitor uniform, not with his cart, but in the same charcoal-grey suit he wore to his wife's funeral, tie crisp, shoes shined, his name tag gone. He walked in without knocking. The room fell silent. A dozen young CEOs, co-founders, and VC reps sat stiff at the long glass table. Nate was at the front, mid-sentence, his tablet open, slides queued up. At first, no one recognized him. Then one of the women, the only one who ever said thank you when he held open the elevator, squinted. "Wait, is that—" Isaiah walked calmly to the head of the table, set down his notebook, opened it with slow, practiced hands. "I'll be leading today's session," he said evenly. "We'll be reviewing tenant compliance, projected lease renewals, and water damage responsibility." Nate blinked. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Isaiah looked directly at him. "Isaiah J. Cole, building owner." Pause. Then, with a flick of calm steel in his voice, "And the man you tried to step over yesterday." The silence that followed was thick enough to mop. You could hear a pen drop, literally. One clattered off the edge of the table as a red-faced co-founder scrambled to straighten his posture. Isaiah didn't flinch. He took his time adjusting the chair at the head of the boardroom table. Every move was deliberate, not slow but unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. Because he did. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence was doing the heavy lifting now. Across the table, Nate was still standing at the whiteboard, frozen mid-pitch, fingers hovering over a screen no one cared about anymore. Isaiah finally looked up, gaze sweeping across the room. "Before we begin," he said, "let's address the matter from yesterday. The 6th floor." The woman who'd recognized him earlier sat up straighter. "Sir, I believe there was a spill." Isaiah nodded, calm and unbothered. "A spill, yes, from unauthorized use of liquid confetti and carbonated beverage dispensers in a no-food zone." He flipped open his notebook and read, word for word, the section from the lease agreement. "Damage resulting from celebratory events, non-approved demonstrations, or negligence of tenant employees will be billed directly to the responsible party, including labor, repair, and operational delays." He looked directly at Nate. "That would be your company, yes?" Nate tried to recover, smiled wide and fake. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that big a deal, really. I'm sure we can chalk it up to, youthful energy." Isaiah didn't return the smile. Instead, he calmly slid a thin stack of invoices across the table, itemized, photos attached. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "Due within 10 business days or I'll begin lease termination proceedings." The room sucked in a breath. "Wait, lease termination?" one of the startup reps asked, glancing at his colleague. "You can't be serious." Isaiah turned the page in his notebook. "I own 62% of the building's corporate structure. That makes me the controlling party. The rest," he said, tapping the notebook, "was handed to my goddaughter and a few partners who know better than to think old means irrelevant." He paused. "Let that settle." Nate laughed once, sharp and panicked. "Okay, man, you made your point. No need to be petty. You're not really going to evict us over a mop and a spill, right? Isaiah finally smiled, a small one, sad and sharp. Young man, he said slowly, you made a choice the first day you walked past me, without looking. Every time you dropped trash near the bin and said, he'll get it. Every time you talked down like your youth made you permanent. Then he stood. And I'm not evicting you because of the mop. I'm evicting you because you don't respect the floor beneath your feet. The floor I built. Silence. Utter crackling silence. Then from the end of the table a voice broke the tension. Mr. Cole, said the soft-spoken woman who had recognized him earlier, I just want to say thank you for everything. Some of us do see you. I do. Isaiah nodded once. That's why you'll have a renewal offer on your desk by tomorrow, he said gently. Discounted for courtesy. Nate stood up, jaw tight, pride leaking out of him. You really gonna just throw us out? We're the highest earning floor in this building. Isaiah didn't blink. You were. Not anymore. He picked up his notebook, tucked it under his arm, and turned to leave. But just before he stepped out the glass door, he paused, looked back. Oh, and Nate. Yeah? Isaiah gave him a small, devastating smile. Next time you call someone old mop, make sure they don't own the building you're standing in. And with that, he walked out. Not a single person dared laugh. Isaiah didn't take the elevator. He rode the service stairs. Quiet, cool, the kind of silence that made old knees ache less. He passed each floor with the calm of someone who'd walked this route long before the building ever had tenants. By the time he reached the 6th, his name badge, the old plastic one labeled maintenance, was back on his chest. He opened the janitor's closet, same pine cleaner, same cracked chair in the corner. He sank into it slowly, the worn leather creaking under his weight. He stared at the mop. Funny thing about tools. People think they tell you what a person does, but Isaiah knew better. They told you who the person chose to be. He didn't need this job, hadn't needed it since 2003, but when his wife died, when the world got too loud with sympathy and too quiet without her, he came back to this, to the smell, to the silence, to the ritual, to remember her. She used to hum while she worked, a soft, drifting sound that got lost in the echo of the empty halls. Sometimes when he was alone late, at night, he swore he still heard it. Isaiah reached into the pocket of his coveralls, pulled out a folded photograph. There she was, wearing the same uniform, smiling in front of the old brick building that stood here before this one. Got 'em, baby, he whispered, voice rough. And he didn't mean just Nate. He meant every one of them. The ones who stepped over folks like her, like him, like they didn't matter. Downstairs, word had spread like spilled coffee. Nate's crew was in chaos. Some packed quietly. Others argued over who would apologize first. One even started Googling how to legally reverse eviction. But it wasn't just the 6th floor buzzing. In the shared kitchen, people whispered, "Wait, Mr. Cole owns the building. I thought he was just..." Did you hear what he said to Nate? No wonder he always smiled like that. The woman from the boardroom, the one who'd thanked him, returned to her desk and typed out a memo. She CC'd the building's entire tenant list. Subject: who really built this place. Body: take 5 minutes today to say thank you. Some of the real architects don't wear suits. By 3 p.m., Isaiah's supply closet had more knock-knocks than a sales floor. One tenant brought him an iced tea, another a gift card. One young intern, the same one who'd made that cruel fake invoice, stood awkwardly at the door. "Mr. Cole," he said, voice low. I didn't know." Isaiah looked up slowly. "Didn't know what?" "Didn't know you owned the place." Isaiah stared at him a moment, then set his rag down. "Son, not knowing I own it. That's fine, not knowing I deserve respect. That's what needs fixing." The kid nodded. "Yes, sir." Start with that. That evening the sun hit the building just right, long streaks of gold through the tall windows. Isaiah stood by the glass, watching people walk out, their faces different now, not scared, but thoughtful, grateful maybe. Behind him someone cleared their throat. A familiar voice. "Mr. Cole." He turned. It was the building manager, a nervous man with a clipboard and a habit of sweating through his collar. "Yes? I just wanted to thank you. Again. And to ask, are you sure you don't want an office?" Isaiah chuckled. "This is my office," he said, glancing around the closet. "Only one in the building that smells like lemon and dignity." And he meant it. The next morning, the elevator doors opened slower than usual. Isaiah stepped out in his usual Navy uniform, creased, clean, and as humble as ever. But the air had shifted. People moved differently now, less hurried, less entitled. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," a woman from the third-floor design firm said softly, handing him a coffee she'd clearly bought just for him. He nodded, accepting it with a quiet thank you, though his eyes studied her posture more than her gift. She didn't seem performative. She looked ashamed. Ashamed it took ownership to earn decency. By 10 a.m., 2 tenants from different companies had asked for his advice on operations. Another offered to help with any janitorial supply upgrades. Isaiah nearly chuckled at that one. "You don't need to upgrade the tools," he'd said. "Just the mindset that made you think they were beneath you." Upstairs, Nate was unraveling. He'd spent the whole night rage-googling lease laws, trying to salvage his credibility. But the email he'd received that morning confirmed it. Notice of non-renewal, 30-day window, loss of keycard access by end of month. He called Isaiah. Twice. No answer. Then he made the mistake of storming down to the janitor's closet, only to find it empty. Isaiah wasn't there. He was on the roof, hands behind his back, eyes on the horizon, watching the sun rise over the skyline his wife never got to see. She used to say, "I clean so one day we can own something that matters." She hadn't meant just buildings. She meant respect. Footsteps echoed behind him. Not the clumsy rush of Nate, but a lighter step. Thoughtful, careful. He turned. It was the young intern again, the one who'd handed him that fake invoice. He was holding something. "Sir," the intern said, nervous but steady. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I wanted to give you this." He held out a reprinted version of the invoice, but this time the numbers had changed. The line item now read, "Lifetime of wisdom and quiet strength, priceless." Isaiah looked at it for a long moment, then tucked it into his jacket pocket. "What's your name, son?" he asked. "Deshawn," the young man said. "Deshawn Blake." Isaiah nodded. "Blake, that name means something. Make sure you do too." He gave a quiet smile, the kind that said, "I see you," the kind no investor ever gave him when he was 20. Later that day, the service closet got a new plaque, small, wooden, hand-carved, placed just above the handle where tenants now paused before knocking. In honor of Grace Cole, she cleaned with dignity. He built with purpose. And underneath, a line Isaiah had once whispered to himself while mopping up a broken coffee pot at 4 a.m. Never confuse labor with lack. The building buzzed quieter now. It wasn't that the noise stopped. The whiteboard still squeaked. The espresso machine still hissed, and someone on the 4th floor still paced while yelling into Bluetooth. But there was a difference, an awareness, like people had started seeing more than just their screens. Isaiah noticed it immediately. Tenants now held doors open without pretending they were just in the way. They greeted him without the awkward cheeriness that tried to mask discomfort. They looked him in the eye like he existed. Still, he stayed in uniform, still rolled his cart, still cleaned up coffee rings and gum under the tables like always. But now some folks offered to help. Not performatively, not for likes or guilt, but because they finally understood something simple. He had never been beneath them. They just hadn't been looking high enough. One Tuesday afternoon, a quiet knock tapped at the janitor closet door. Isaiah opened it to find the building's youngest tenant, a teenage girl with box braids and a shy energy, holding a laptop and a notebook full of sketches. She was part of a youth accelerator program that leased one tiny office on the second floor. Nobody paid them much attention, except Isaiah. She looked up at him nervously. Mr. Cole, I was wondering if I could ask you something." He waved. "Her in. I got 5 minutes and one folding chair. Take whichever one you want." She sat cradling her laptop. "So, you really own all this?" Isaiah shrugged. "Not all of it. Just the part folks walk on." She grinned, then grew serious. "How'd you learn to do that? Like, own something?" Isaiah leaned back, resting his elbows on the mop handle like a king with a crooked staff. "Same way I learned how to mop, from someone who never let me forget what pride looks like." The girl nodded. "My grandma says that too. That ownership isn't just about money. It's about not being erased." Isaiah's eyes softened. He pointed to her sketchbook. "Let me see." She hesitated, then flipped it open. Logos, designs, a mock-up for a clothing brand called Grace in Motion. Underneath was the tagline, "Built by hands they overlooked." Isaiah stared for a long moment. "I'll be your first investor," he said. Her jaw dropped. "Wait, for real?" He nodded. "But on one condition." "Anything," she said. "You promise me you won't ever let a uniform tell you who someone is, not even your own." She blinked, then nodded fiercely. "I won't, I swear." Isaiah reached for the folded envelope in the top drawer. A check already made out for a small seed fund. It wasn't much in the eyes of the world, but it was everything in the hands of someone who believed. He handed it to her with one sentence. "Legacy isn't loud, but it don't ever die." Back. On the 6th floor, Nate's old office sat empty. The glass door had been wiped clean, his name removed. A new startup, small, community-led, minority-owned, had moved in just yesterday. And when they met Mr. Cole that morning in the elevator, they didn't call him Sir, like he was someone above them. They just said with sincerity, "Thank you for making room for us." Isaiah nodded, slow and quiet. "Don't thank me. Just hold the door open for the one behind you."